The story takes place in the Vosges, a region in the east of France near Germany. Geographically, it is composed of a range of low mountains, the highest point being 1,400 metres. That's 4,670 feet. Half of the area is covered by deep, dark forests. It is the ideal place to go trekking and explore. In the 16th and 17th century, the Vosges were part of the Lorraine, which at the time was called the country between. In the west, the area was under the dominion of the French kings who dreamed of annexing the Lorraine. In the east, the part was the sphere of the influence of the Holy Empire. In the north, Spain controlled the Luxembourg. Travelling through the Vosges in 1672, the Duchess Montpensier, niece of Louis XIII, spews a rather harsh judgment on its inhabitants. "Oh, the men and women look only human because their minds act like beasts." The region is littered with landmarks of the wars which took place there. And if you are into more spooky adventures, sometimes following a path, you can reach a mass of rocks or a bridge or a small road that contains the word devil or witch in their name. If you ask the locals or the tourist office, they will share tales of those who encountered the Dark Prince and paid a heavy price. Sometimes, if you drive alongside the forests, you can imagine what kind of long-forgotten drama took place there, and what dark secrets stay untold. As with most stories, tragedies start with few words. A long time ago, during the Second World War, posters stated that careless talk costs lives, to discourage people from talking about sensitive information in the event that a foreign spy could hear it. The same slogan could have been used centuries before during the witch hunt craze that set Europe in a frenzy of torture and executions. It starts around 1601. A 9-year-old girl, Mengiot, confides to her female cousins that she has a secret. The devil led her and her grandmother to the Sabbat. The father of the girls, Mengiot's uncle, Nicolas de Monge, decides to learn more. He questions the little girl, and she recounts a strange tale. 1 week ago, the devil, dressed in black, fetched her entire family, grandparents, parents, her aunt and uncle, to a feast, followed by dancing. Nicholas learns that his mother-in-law, Mengiot's grandmother, was the one who introduced her to the Sabbat, and furthermore, that her uncle Georges, his own brother-in-law, received money from the devil. While people danced, Georges' son, Georgel, was playing the flute. The Pivert's servant, Colette Remy, was also fetching food for the guests. Nicholas is shocked and denounces the family to the authorities. In May 1602, the Provost starts collecting evidence against the family. The eldest members, Rolat Pivert and his wife Chanon, then their sons, Georges and de Monge, the latter being Mengiot's father. Finally, the wives of their sons are investigated too. When interrogated, Nicholas's own daughters repeat what their cousin Mengiot told them about the devil, the feast and the dancing. 2 months later, in June 1602, the little girl Mengiot is arrested and kept in the provost's house due to her young age. She confirms again that she went to the Sabbat with her grandmother twice, and they were taken by the devil and led on a black horse to a feast. She explains that she danced there. She also reveals that she and her father used snares to make their cows give plenty of milk. Today, these are also called devil's snares and can be found as evidence in other witch trials at the time. Consequently, in July 1602, the Pivert's servant, Colette Remy, who is charged with witchcraft, accused other people of being involved, and her confession is sent to the court at Bruyères. The authorities react and arrest the entire Pivert family, all but 6 children. What happens next is a ghastly repetition of a scenario played out all over Europe at the time. It starts with the interrogation of the accused. He or she maintains his or her innocence. The judge decides to use torture to obtain information. The witch then confesses that yes, he or she went to the Sabbat to meet the devil and received gifts from him. Under mental and physical torture, the accused also throws the names of those they saw there. Some try to resist. For example, Georges and his wife Margot deny any wrongdoing, but after several sessions of torture, they relent. Margot later denied her admissions of guilt because they were under constraint, but it doesn't save her. Their son, Georgel, 11 years old, cries when hearing the cleric read the charges against him. He is put on the rack and whipped and made to talk. Later, he retracts his statements because, and I quote, he was hurting badly. Whipped again, the young boy confesses again and confirms that, yes, he saw Mengiot and his parents, their grandmother and Colette the servant at the Sabbat. After 2 or 3 more blows, he adds the name of his uncle Demange and his aunt Marion. The little boy begs not to be confronted to his family as he fears their anger because of his accusations. Sadly, a few months later, he watches his parents and grandfather be burned alive before he's whipped once more and sent far away. The 2 adults who escaped death are the ones who never confessed at all. Jean refused to talk even when tortured, and Marion, the wife of Demange, acts modestly, cries but denies to be guilty of witchcraft even under the torture. Both of them live, and they are released on a kind of parole called renvoyé jusqu'à rappel, which translates to returned until recall. And at the end of the ordeal, the grandparents of the Pivert family, 2 of their sons and 1 of their daughters-in-law are burned at the stake. The children, Mengiot and little Georgel, are whipped and sent away to be left in the care of church people. Life in the Vosges is difficult, but the people are accustomed to it. Due to the lack of technological advancement, agriculture doesn't provide high yields even while everybody works in the fields. In the mountains, raising crops for food is difficult and livestock is preferred. Solidarity and collaboration within the community are important to face these adverse circumstances. According to Jean-Claude Diedler, a social historian who specialised in the rural communities, he states that the population could be divided into 2 categories. The first are mobile to a certain point. They exercise an activity linked with agriculture or livestock, while also having another job as craftsmen or traders. They can move around according to the jobs on offer or while visiting the cattle markets. The other category, far less mobile because of society or poverty, comprises of women and farm labourers. The women generally are confined to the family house, travel to work locally as a servant or to marry, rarely moving far away from where they were born. The labourers travel from farm to farm according to the needs and of course the seasons, only running further if the law was after them. If some do travel further than the confines of the community, the majority is still born, live and die within an area limited to how far they could travel on foot or by horse. Depending on the terrain, a person could cover 50 kilometres a day with a horse, yet just 12 to 15 kilometres by foot. In winter, the majority of the dirt roads are inaccessible, leaving entire communities totally isolated. Distance also hinders the propagation of news, slowly trickling into those remote villages and towns. Learning about the world far beyond the mountains and forests is difficult. The news that eventually reaches them is usually a form of gossip and distorted like a game of Chinese whispers. Travellers and peddlers, those returning from the market, carry news to the community. The dearth of solid, reliable information fosters irrationality and, of course, fear. In 17th century remote communities, the world is a scary place, where the living conditions are harsh and when a small incident could mark the downfall of an entire family. The constant spectre of hunger and the dread of losing everything haunts people daily. As well as simply surviving, the inability to pay taxes can lead to poverty and homelessness. It explains why any crime against property is severely punished. Even stealing a loaf of bread was a sure way to the gallows. Fear permeates the daily life. It's the fear of the unknown, of the stranger coming into the community, begging for bread or work. Is he an ingenious traveller playing out a scam? Is he the vanguard of an invading army, or maybe the accomplice of a troop of brigands scouting out the area? Fear of the unexpected, like natural disasters, diseases striking people, making them totally vulnerable. People try to grasp for explanations. Is something wrong with the world? Is God angry towards his creatures? Is someone playing fast and loose with the natural order of things? People looked for answers and decided to go for the simplest explanation. As their vision of the world got distorted, fear and the consequences was a blight on lives. People performed mass demonstrations of devotion to try and bring back just some form of stability to their community. During the plague, hordes of flagellants roamed the streets, offering their suffering to a god who has given up on his children. And in times of drought or floods, the authorities keep busy by lighting stakes and immolating men and women as sacrificial victims. To smother their fears, people can count on the support of the powerful and omnipresent church. At the centre of the community, it orchestrates all acts of life from birth to death and beyond, and makes its presence felt. In the middle of village life, it oversees all, rhyming its existence with the sound of bells. During saints' festivals and during the Holy Week or special occasions like funerals, processions led by the priest remind the faithful of the omnipresence of God himself, bringing comfort to people. To face any threats and dangers, the people pray and worship to a vast array of saints. Saint Apollinaire, to ask him to protect your livestock, Saint Medard to stop the rain threatening to rot the wheat. Any wish, any request, there is a saint. There are beliefs linked to holy days and things that you should or should not do. For example, don't wash your bed linen on All Saints' Day, for it is your burial shroud you are washing. There are also gestures to perform for protection. When leaving your house, to protect yourself against the devil, wash your hands and pray to God. The Church offers solutions to protect the believer from bad luck too. Priests bless medals to protect the owner against any disease or evil. In the liturgy book, you find prayers to bless seeds, seedlings, and flowers at the Assumption. If religion and God play such a big role in the life of the population, it is expected that the devil will make an appearance too. Well, the devil must have chosen the Vosges in which to spend his free time on earth. The region is littered with places that are linked to him. Here, it is a crossroad where a traveller meets a tall man wearing black clothes. Here, a bridge he built in exchange for a soul as payment. There, a rock he dropped when fleeing to hell. The devil likes to approach those who need help and fulfill their wishes. Stretched on the rack or standing in front of a judge, men and women agree that he offers the chance of a better life. To a poor man, like Pivert, the devil gives money that turns into leaves and a powder he used to kill the cow of his neighbour. Mengiot, his granddaughter, gorges on bread and meat during the feast, while their servant was seduced by the devil. He will tell all as his torture continues. Through those confessions, you can see the preoccupation of the people. What do they need to survive in these harsh, forested, mountainous conditions? They tell of getting more milk from the cows, more money, wreaking revenge on a rival or a neighbour. We also get the idea of what they fear: destitution, poverty, and what they desire, security and food. But begging for help to the devil can only end badly. He tricks a supplicant, or worse, they will later end fighting for their life in front of a judge. For those confessing to having met the Dark Prince and receiving gifts are automatically viewed as witches. At the beginning, the Church labelled witchcraft a heresy, a belief or opinion contrary to orthodox religious doctrine, such as the Christian Church. The institution was far more apt to deal with this type of crime, as the accused had renounced God. Ironically, suspects had better chances to escape torture and survive if they were arrested by the Church's Inquisition. The purpose of this institution was to root out heresy, to fight those who opposed the Church. Once one admitted his heresy, in theory there was no need to execute the person. In Spain, Portugal and Italy, countries where the Inquisition was going strong, of 8,500 people accused of witchcraft, only 1,300, that's 15.3%, were executed. In comparison, in Protestant countries where the crime was investigated by civil authorities, the rate of execution rose to 59.5%, almost 4 times as much. Clerics conducting the witch hunts were living outside of these remote communities, and disasters falling on the struggling villagers did not have the same impact for those who benefited from the shelter and protection of the Church. Slowly, the crime of witchcraft became the responsibility of secular courts named by people living locally. While the Inquisition followed a rulebook when it came time to uncover and interrogate the suspects, civil courts took a very different approach. How do you know that you've been victim or witnessed an act of witchcraft? How is a witch discovered? Nobody would claim loudly to be in contact with the devil, so it was through observing or denouncing. Any out of the ordinary or traumatic incident would raise suspicions. The death of a cow or goat, a sudden hailstorm, a broken leg after a fall. Suspicions would concentrate on someone in the community, particularly people standing out because they're in conflict with their neighbours or family. This could also be because of their odd behaviour, because of a physical feature like a hunchback or disability. At the time of their arrests, the Pivert family had gathered bad vibes from their neighbours and relatives. A few years before the incident, in 1598, Rolat Pivert had been beaten badly by his son-in-law Nicolas de Monge, who was fined. Rolat describes Nicolas as an enemy, and that Nicolas has sworn he would get his revenge. Around the village, some whisper that Jeannon, the grandmother and Rolat's wife, is maybe a witch. Rolat is actually aware of this rumour, and he states that he had never seen any harm in her. Colette Remy, the servant, initially left the Pivert family because of ill treatment and piled up the accusations on them when she was being interrogated. And so these denunciations started a vicious cycle. Any resistance or denial from the suspect was followed by torture till he gave away his secrets and, of course, his accomplices. According to historian Jacques Rohig, in Lorraine, 306 witches denounced 3,600 accomplices. During the interrogations, the members of the Pivert family implicated other persons from the community too, who were soon fighting for their survival. Colette Remy, the servant, confirmed the presence of the Pivert family at the Sabbat, with also 7 other inhabitants of the village. At the time, witchcraft was the only crime that could be prosecuted without the need for concrete evidence. A rumour, gossip, whispers were enough to have you dragged into court and fight for your life. Now you have been arrested in front of your family, friends and neighbours. You are thrown in jail. Still dazed, you're pushed in front of a judge to hear the reasons for your arrest, and suddenly you realise the mess you were in. Something that you thought was a trivial incident has gained a new and more sinister interpretation. The name of the witnesses are kept under wraps for the moment. Any rebuttal you mutter reinforces the idea that you are a witch. Everybody knows that witches lie. Finally, you have the chance to confront the witnesses and the truth sinks in. Your accusers are your relatives, your friends, your neighbours. In your despair, you try to defend yourself, plead for the person to stop lying about you, or angrily you reveal some awful home truth about them to save your own skin. For example, in the Pivert family, Georges confronted his mother Jeannon, crying and falling to his knees, asking why she wants him dead. Later, he admits that he believes his own mother has accused him of taking part in witchcraft because of her hatred towards his wife. As an accused, even if you have the means, you don't have the access to a lawyer. None of them would touch your case, fearing to be accused of being bewitched by you. No witness springs to your defence for fear of being considered an accomplice. No matter what, you are stuck between a rock and a hard place. You confess, then you die. You deny it, you get tortured, you end up confessing, and you die anyway. Once the sentence is passed, there is no appeal possible for the crime of witchcraft. While waiting for the day of execution, the sentence is announced publicly and a large wooden stake is erected, usually in the marketplace or centre of the village. On your last day, the executioner and his assistant helps extract you from your cell. You are exposed on a pillory before being tied to the stake and burned alive. You died, hated and feared, surrounded by those you considered your friends and family. Analysing the local and ducal archives allows an estimation of the impact of the witch hunts in Lorraine. It's not possible to obtain an accurate number due to the inequality of the conservation of the handwritten archives. Some historians agree that in the 90 years between 1544 and 1634, around 3,000 people were deemed witches, and of those, 2,000 were executed. But those records do not take into account acts of spontaneous violence like lynching or murder. During the period of the 30 Years' War, the witch hunts slowed down. According to Auguste Digo, Histoire de la Lorraine, 1856, he explains why. Witchcraft ceases the day more important events redirected the attention of the people. The local crime of witchcraft pales in the face of exactions committed by foreign soldiers crossing the country. At the end of the horrific ordeal, all who are left of the Pivert family are 3 adults and 8 children. Of the adults, Marianne and Jean are renvoyés jusqu'à la rappel, meaning that they were still under suspicion and could be recalled in front of a court in the blink of an eye. The children, Mangiot and Georgel, were sent to Toul, more than 120 kilometers from their home, and received confirmation as a way to re-enter into the grace of God. Then, at that place, they should be left with trusted people of the church who would bring them up. But as children with a sulphurous reputation sent into exile, their existence must have been harsh and was surely short. Yet the saddest part involves little 11-year-old Georgel. At the first interrogation, he denied his participation to the Sabbat. He wanted to be back, watching his herd and playing the recorder because he dreams of becoming a minstrel. Instead, he got tortured and confessed, but begs his torturers not to make him confront his family, fearing their reactions to the accusations he was making. If he talked, it was because he was hurting too much from the injuries. When he relapsed and revoked the confessions, he is whipped again. A few blows are enough for him to confess again and admit the presence of his grandmother, Mangiot, and his own parents. After 2 or 3 more blows, he suddenly remembers seeing his uncles and Aunt Demange, Jean and Marianne. In the end, he begs to be sent to school just for the pain to stop. And sadly, he no longer wants to even be a minstrel. On the 28th of September, 1602, he watches his parents and grandfather burned alive, and then he is whipped again before being exiled to his new faraway foster home at the church. He is just a child. All the possessions of the family are seized and sold to the community to cover the cost of the trial, including the feeding of the 2 children who were being interrogated. The family lands are put to sale, but no one rushes to buy them. Why? Because they are not vast and not even good for cultivation. The spectre of starvation, the fear of losing everything, became a reality for this poor family. The Piverts disappeared into the limbo of history. While all over Europe, the sorry tale repeats itself, for years to come.